Okie dokie. I am grateful to be able to learn with you guys this evening. Um, so this week's Parsha gives me a chance to talk about something that I've been thinking about for the last while. And that is think back to the 6 Day War. So originally, even though it was such a brief war, but there was like an initial plan. And that initial plan involved obviously dealing with Israel's enemies that had basically amassed along its borders, ready to pounce on it and to destroy it. So they dispatched of their air forces and did great damage right away at the beginning of the 6 Day War. At one point, the opportunity to take over the Temple Mount, Har Habayis, presented itself, and they decided to go for it and were successful. They conquered the Temple Mount. They conquered what is called East Jerusalem, that whole area. At the end of the 6 Day War. And looking back, one might come to the conclusion that their surprising success left them befuddled, that they didn't expect to conquer it. And once they conquered it, they didn't know what to do with it. And essentially they gave it back. They didn't give it back entirely, but they gave the keys to Har Habayis essentially back to the Muslim Waqf. Technically, Israel still controls it, but it's not, it's. And when you think about that, I mean, you could talk about the politics of the moment. These are leaders of a Jewish state that still have to contend with lots of hostile forces all around them. But that moment of having Har Habayis under our control for the first time in 2,000 years, or 1,900 years. Yeah, so it really looks like a shocking waste. And I think part of it was clearly we weren't ready. We weren't prepared for that success. And then once you have it, you don't know what to do with it. And I guess there's never just one factor, but that's the one I wanted to focus on a little bit, because I know that when people imagine our near future, the near future of the Jewish people, there's lots of fear right now and trepidation. But there is a potential scenario that for the first time, Israel will be without a direct threat from outside the country. That is a potential scenario. I'm not saying it's the most likely scenario, but it is a potential scenario. It was already shocking to people when Hezbollah fell. It was shocking upon shocking when Syria fell. And I think a lot of people are surprised so far by Israel's initial success in Iran. Now, just because you're having success in Iran, even if you had regime change in Iran, there's no guarantee that they don't go back to their old ways. And there's no guarantee that Syria won't go back to its old ways. There's no guarantee that Hezbollah won't become powerful again. There's no guarantee that Hamas will not rearm and become a threat again. There's no guarantees, but it's possible that we could find ourselves in a scenario. It is at least one of the possibilities. And when you have possibilities for the future, you want to be prepared for them. You prepare for all manner of scenarios. That's what you do when you're leadership. That's when you do when you're in charge of security. That's when, what you do in life, just in our own personal lives, that you plan for more than one possible scenario. And so it's possible that in a few weeks, we could be in a situation where we have no direct existential threat to Israel from outside of it. And the question is, what do you do in a situation? In other words, have we planned for this? Because there's all sorts of things that we have found ourselves not doing because of our concern over what the world reaction would be. And especially the Arab world's reaction, what the Arab world's reaction would be. And so if suddenly you find yourself with an upper hand,
don't let your guard down.
No, I'm not saying you let your guard down, but I'm saying you plan. We're so used to being afraid. We're so used to being
on guard
that it's possible that we don't know how to live without it. This is one of the ways of understanding the episode with the spies in this week's parsha. What is it that was so terrible about this moment that it worse than the golden calf? This moment's worse than the golden calf. After the golden calf, there was no discussion about delaying going into Israel. And I mean, I don't know in all ways if it was worse than the golden calf, but it looks like it, because after the golden calf, there's fallout. There's going to be, there might be a long attempt at repair for it, but it didn't stop us from going into the land of Israel. For these people, the plan was that all these people are going to go to the land of Israel within like a year. And now we're at this point, we're like a couple of weeks from going in, and we totally collapse.
Yep.
And it obviously these people came back with a terrible report, but it's not simply that they came back with a terrible report. It was the reaction of the rest of the country to this terrible report, and the fact that we sort of collapse on ourselves in fear. Now, you could say that the reason we collapse on ourselves in fear is because we are recently free. We've been slaves for hundreds of years. We don't know what it means to be on our own. We don't know what it means to be responsible for ourselves. We're afraid because we don't know. And because of that, we are capable of sabotage.
The fear of change.
Right. Yeah. But there's a fear of the next stage. There's a fear of the next stage. I saw an article where Rabbi Sachs compared it to like, a teenager or a young teenager thinking about leaving the house, or the various stages we go through as we mature, um, involve moving into areas that are unfamiliar. And there's a certain kind of fear that comes from that, but there's also practice that comes with that. In a life that's allowed to move without hindrance, like our lives tend to be, you get a chance to experience that a little bit when you go to kindergarten. Then you get a chance to experience that again when you go to middle school. You get a chance to experience that again when you go to high school. You get a chance to experience it when you go to summer camp. You get a chance to experience it when you go away to college. You get a chance to experience it when you start dating and you get married and you get a job. And each one of these, and so in the course of a unfettered life, in a course of a life that's allowed to move forward, right, you would get all manner of practice at thinking about the next stage and preparing for it, knowing that you can't picture it till you're there, but you've had that a few times, so you know that. Recognizing the apprehension because you've had it several times. So you still have the fear of the unknown and the apprehension, but you've also been there several times and you've seen it's worked out. And so you that allows you to move forward. But people that didn't get those kind of opportunities, that were always in a situation where they didn't know if they're going to be alive the next day. And there's all manner of dysfunction all around them. So they don't get that opportunity. And now they've only been free for a short period of time. That it's very possible that it just takes a couple triggers and they're gone. And that's what happened. This seems to be what the Rambam suggests, that this is part of the reason for the collapse, that we're not free long enough, that we had all that baggage of slavery and we're just not ready for the responsibilities that are going to come next. It's not just that we're not ready for battle, but we're not ready for all the responsibilities of running our own country and of making a living ourselves and raising our own families and all these kinds of things in a situation where there's no adversaries, there's no we just might not be ready for that. And so, and I'm suggesting that this gives us an opportunity when we're planning for the various possible scenarios going forward to think about this, to think about, are we prepared for a situation where anti-Semitism is not a real scary threat, where the potential of annihilation of Israel is not a realistic concern? Are we ready to have an opportunity to look into ourselves and help design our best future as a people in the land of Israel? When you take tours of Israel, there was, I would say this, there was a little break from this. It used to be, even I would say up to like the 90s, even up to the 90s, it used to be that if you took a tour of Israel, wherever you went, you would be shown some vestige of wars with Arabs or terrorist attacks. You'd be going down a highway, they have burnt out trucks on the highway, or you're going to Hadassah and there's a memorial to the people that were killed in Hadassah. You go to Hebron, there's a memorial for the people that were killed in the Hebron massacre. There's and these were ubiquitous. These were happening over and over like on any tour, doesn't matter who was running the tour. These were
Sites. They,
any part of the country you went to, on any day, there was at least a few of those. Part of the kind of reliable hook for youth to stay connected to their Judaism and connected to their to Jewish culture and heritage is that they hate you out there, and they're going to kill you whether you assimilate or you don't assimilate. And so you might as well stick with your people, remain embedded in your own culture, so that you'll suffer the least from what is out there waiting to tear at you because you're Jewish. If you, this has been used as at least one of the messages in Hebrew school, in summer camps, etc., when people talk about a Jewish identity and the Jewish image.
Tell people West Side Story. Stick to your own God.
That's it. There you go. The role that the Holocaust plays in many people's lives, not simply as a reminder of something that's out there, but as almost a major pillar of their Jewish lives, that there's time devoted to holidays, there's time devoted to Israel, and there's time devoted to the Holocaust. It's like a pillar in many people's identity. And again, the explanation for that is because if we don't remember it, it's going to happen again, right? So, by the way, that is not a religious idea, and I just want you to know it.
Okay.
That it does not appear in the Torah. It does appear in Hazinu that you gain lessons from what happened in the past, but having to remember tragedies, or they're going to happen again. It's not. It doesn't. I think it was Santa. I don't even know if it's a correct quote. Those who forget history are condemned to relive it, or something. I think that is often misquoted. Let's see.
We're close.
What is the correct quote? And those who forget.
Condemned to repeat it.
Yeah, so
That.
Let's see what it says here. The correct quote by George Santayana is, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it."
I got the last half.
The way it's often said is, "Those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it." But here it's, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned." I don't know if it's tremendously different. But again, we value learning lessons from our history. We spend a good amount of time doing that, but the emphasis on tragedy and the motivation to serve God because otherwise there's going to be tragedy, and then looking around and seeing tragedy, almost finding comfort in it. I notice it within myself. I'm embarrassed to say it, but I notice it within myself that there's a strange comfort that happens when there's been a tragedy that involves Israel or Jewish people in America. There's like, I, I'm embarrassed to say this, but there's like a relief. It's like it's like I've come to expect it. It's a comfortable place to be. It's where right. This is like that. What happens in dysfunctional lives that we find comfort in discomfort. We find comfort in dysfunction. We find comfort in fear. Like going to a fearful place is weirdly comfortable. And I'm not saying that everybody has this, but I recognize it in myself. And I think I see it in a lot of other people too, that we're not going to know what to do if there's not a reason to be afraid.
You have a point.
That we could be like those people who captured Har Habayis. You know, thousands of years. There have been people who dreamed of a Beis Hamikdash on Har Habayis. Just as Jews to have control of it, who thought it was impossible. And then for like a short while we have it, and then we just don't know what to do with it. You could say the thing was, it was a very important political strategy, and it was absolutely the right decision. People say that when Moshe Dayan, I guess, advocated for it and returned the keys to the Waqf, to the control of Har Habayis to the Muslims. But just wouldn't you have wanted there to be some time where we could think about it, where we and could there have been a time when we could have gathered all the dreams and hopes of thousands of years of Jewish people into that conversation about what to do with this situation? Like I know that there are a lot of Orthodox Jews who do not consider that day to be a holiday. The Dati Leumi, the religious Jews in Israel, and some religious Jews around the world celebrate Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day, which is also a national holiday in Israel, as a Jewish holiday. And they say Hallel on that day. I do not understand how anybody thinks we should not be saying Hallel on that day. We recaptured Har Habayis. We recaptured the Temple Mount. This is one of the it was so unbelievable that it happened. It seems so impossible that what other response could there be than to say Hallel? Except that it seems like we just weren't ready. That we, in a certain way, are like the Jews who are standing before Israel and are not ready. Now, it could be that had those leaders come back and worded it a different way, and they got a chance to get in there and see God take down Jericho and do these other things, they would have built strength and they would have gathered and they wouldn't have needed to collapse and have 38 years, but we did. And then looking back, one of the chief explanations for it is that we did not believe we were ready for it. We can't be that way about these next opportunities, and it's possible that these opportunities are presenting themselves. That there is going to be a time in the not so distant future when we are not afraid of our enemies. It's one of the descriptions of messianic times. And according to the Rambam, he quotes Shmuel, the great Talmudic sage, first generation Babylonian of the Talmudic sages from Bavel, who says that there's not going the difference between now and the Messianic age is what we call shibud malchus, the control over Israel by other kingdoms around the world. And it is possible that we are about to witness the end of that. It's not like the pipe dream that would have been before the 6-Day War, that they were going to be able to conquer Har HaBayis. Now, this is way more realistic than that. This is a real possibility. It's such a real possibility that we would be foolish not to prepare for it. We saw what it looked like when we weren't prepared to take over Har HaBayis. If we're not prepared to live without Shibud Malchus, without control from these other kingdoms. Now, it could be Mashiach just pops up right when that happens. It could be. It could be we're not going to have to do anything on our own. It could be that a leader is just going to present himself. He's going to be Mashiach. He's going to give us instructions, and we are going to just naturally move into it. That is a potential scenario even within that. So again, we've got the possibility of in a short while not living under the control of foreign governments, not living under the fear of destruction from outside forces. We are potentially days or weeks away from that. If that happens, there is a scenario which I think a lot of us would prefer, which is that Mashiach just shows up and then just tell us what to do from then on, just step by step, and it all goes smoothly and everything's fine. But if we're going to be left to handle the first stages of that before Mashiach comes, we have to be ready for it.
And while we're getting ready for it, they're trying to rearm.
I'm saying, if you talk like that, though, that's
another
fine. So let the people who are in charge of the army worry about that.
Yes.
But if you decimate them, you're at least going to have a period of time where that doesn't have to be the first thing on your mind.
Could be the rest of my life.
Right. But I think a lot of people are just going to keep on saying as a mantra what you just said, and are not going to allow themselves to think about participating in a design for the next stage of Jewish life in Israel. One of the things that changed on those tours up until the 90s, it was like pounded in. I noticed it even on our own tours. When I was teaching at Or Sameach, we used to do tours, and it annoyed me how much we were focused on what it seemed like fear-mongering. Mm-hmm. But whatever. But then something changed, and which was a pride in the country that was starting to form, and startup nation, the idea that Israel is seen as a global influence when it comes to business acumen and business sense. And the fact that we had Rabbi Aryeh Lightstone visit a couple of years ago. He was right in the mix of the Abraham Accords. And he talked about Chad. I think Chad joined the Abraham Accords. And what Chad wanted in order to sign on was Israel expertise in water and agriculture. They didn't even want weapons. They didn't want money necessarily. They wanted, and he was pointing this out, that suddenly there is even amongst nations that you would think have no reason to look to Israel, there are nations that are looking to Israel for things that can change their lives and improve their living conditions, et cetera, going forward. That started to happen in the material. That was starting to be included in tours after that, and continues to be a kind of pride. And when you visit places, wherever you visit in Israel, the construction's going on everywhere, and people are just alive. You just feel it. There's vitality. There was a priest who had the Catholic version of a Hillel house at Hebrew University. And I heard him interviewed on a news show. This is going back probably like 40 years. But he was asked, like, what are the big challenge for Catholic students that come? What do you find are challenges that they have being in Israel? And he said, one of the big challenges is that they see a vital Jewish state, because Catholic theology had been that Judaism was over. And now you see just vitality. You see just Jewish life all over, and it just seems so alive. And that is one of the biggest challenges for Catholic students who are coming to Israel. What do you do about that? What does it mean to you? So that is something that has started to change. That's become more of the conversation. Now, we as people who are devoted to the lessons of the Torah and to our tradition, we have more as part of our agenda than simply being a prosperous country. Certainly, prosperity is a sign of Mashiach, that there's going to be prosperity, but prosperity isn't the goal. Prosperity allows us to not have to worry about not having enough, so that we can focus on doing what we're here to do. And if you asked people, what is Israel here to do as a nation? What should be our raison d'etre? What should be our focus? Should we find ourselves suddenly free? And that after in Purim, they were able to go back and rebuild, and including building the second Beis Hamikdash, but rebuilding Jewish life in Israel. That they were able to focus on that, and we've been focusing on that. Obviously, there's a lot missing. We don't have our key executive branches in place. We don't have the Beis Hamikdash. We don't have prophets. We don't have the Sanhedrin, right? We don't have those kind of institutions. We don't have a king, although we do have Jewish government. And there is some question about whether this satisfies the king requirement, or does it actually have to be a king? But it could be that the government we have already fulfills that role. But anyways, our major institutions, we still don't have those. But even those are not the goal. The goal is not to have your institutions in place. Your goal requires having institutions in place, but it's not the goal itself. The goal is stated at various places in the Torah. God wants us to be holy. He wants us to be a kingdom of priests, a mamlechas kohanim. He wants us to be to live as his treasured nation, to be a light unto the other nations. These are all things that we will have a chance to focus on once we're relieved of the shackles of the Shibud Malchus, which again, is possibly happening very soon. There is a terrible danger that is present with us that threatens to undo the possibility of getting to those places without extra divine help. And that is the unwarranted hatred that Jews display towards other Jews, which, you know, when I've brought it up lately to people and I've said, like, what do you imagine would happen? Let's say, just like it's like that day when suddenly Har Habayit Biadenu, they shouted, Har Habayit's in our hands. So let's say we have that day and Iran just collapses and we just realize we're looking around and we just realize that's it. We don't have an imminent existential threat to Israel at this moment. So what do you think the next step would be? And so several people have told me we'll kill each other. That's also something we have to plan for.
Yeah.
We have to plan for that. We have to find ways to make that an absolute priority, that we are going to deal with the sinas chinam, the sinat chinam, that shows itself.
And it will.
Right. So, but the thing is, we've seen it a couple times, and we know that it's ready to rear its head, which means that we are informed and we should be able to make it a priority, but it needs to be an immediate priority.
Right.
Once it should have already been a priority. We saw this was front and center before October 7th. And then when October 7th happened, it was on the lips of many people that how important it is that we are united and how wonderful it is to feel united after the fractiousness of what was going on before. And then it felt like we were slipping back into it again. And now we've had another moment to feel that sense of unity. So we could use it like a school child uses the various experiences as they're moving through life to prepare them for having a family and a job and things like that later on. We could take these experiences and make informed decisions that will directly tackle these challenges. To me, that should be the number one focus. And it's something that, you know, there are many people that have been focusing on it in the last while. And but it needs, if somebody would say, what do you do on day one? If you saw that happening, I would say on day one, I would immediately focus on methodologies for maintaining the unity of the Jewish people. And again, that isn't even an end goal. The end goal isn't the unity of the Jewish people. It's just that you can't accomplish much if there's infighting. We're not going to be able to reach our potential if there's infighting. And ultimately, prosperity and peace and health and unity, these are all conditions that allow us to fulfill what is our purpose and our mission as the Jewish people. If you don't have to worry about those other things, then you can put all of your energy and all of your effort in being what it is that God wants us to be.
Yeah.
But we have to prepare for it. We have to think about it, at least in part, not in a way that if it doesn't happen, suddenly we're crushed and we can't go on, but in a pragmatic way, just like people plan for several different eventualities when you're the head of a business, when you're the head of a government. So when you're
for it to go well, but you also have to plan for
all eventualities, right? And you have to have hedges, and you have to have there are people that have generators in their garages. There are people that have canned foods in their house and bottled water. There are people that drive around with a blanket in their trunk. There are people that have all sorts of things like this because they once had an experience or they came close to an experience and they thought to themselves, I might need that and I'm going to be prepared for it. I'm suggesting, like that we be prepared for this eventuality, the eventuality that Shibud Malchus falls away, that Mashiach doesn't come right away, that we're expected to take some more steps until Mashiach comes, and then and not to be just staring like a deer in a headlight when we suddenly realize we got our dreams. Now we don't know what to do with it. I have everything I dreamed about, and now I don't know what to do with it. That we don't need to be there. We've been there. We do not need to be there, and we can. And one of the ways of doing that is to plan now and put things into place now. And for me, the thing of highest priority, and it's certainly something we can start to put in place now, is love amongst each other, and yes, and the end of sinat chinam, and the sense of unity, the possibility of unity that comes when we get rid of that sinat chinam. There's going to be all sorts of fears that arise. There's the fears that we're conditioned to feel. They're coming after us. Oh, you don't see it? They're coming after us. They're coming after us. They're going to come after. Vehi she'amda lavoseinu v'lanu shebechol dor v'dor omdim aleinu l'chaloseinu. This has stood for our fathers and for us, and every generation they stand over us to destroy us. There's going to be a point where that is no longer true. But we can't keep on repeating that mantra once it's not true. We have to be ready for the next step. And the way, as far as I'm concerned, to prepare for that next step is for us to work on loving each other, on working through our difficulties in relationships, building bridges, healing rifts, that those should be our practice, our priority practice to get ready for the next stage. When it happens, we'll be ready to set up those institutions. We're not. I'm saying the chances that we're going to be ready right now are slim to none. That's what I'm saying. We need to be ready. We're not ready. No, we're not ready. And I am suggesting we are way more comfortable in a role where we are under constant threat. Right. And we're not prepared for a time when that's not the case. And that is a possibility that's happening. The rest of the world's not going to matter. That's what I'm saying. It's possible in a few weeks what the rest of the world thinks about Jews or Israel is not going to matter. And but then we're going to not be ready for what we need. And it's possible that sinas chinam creeps back. We can't let that be the case. That's what I'm suggesting, inspired by this week's parsha. And I look forward to talking more about this in the future. Yes, ma'am.
There's a beautiful talk today. It might even be circular. It might be that the preparation brings it about. Another word.
Yes. Self-fulfilled. Like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. And in a kind of a different way, one of the things in that biography of Barvanel is that after what had, all the stuff that had been with it, when he was given freedom, when he went, from the Sultan or whoever gave it to him, that he didn't think in political terms at all. He didn't think that way, and he should have. That was one of the criticisms, that it might have brought Mashiach then, anyway.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Right.
And so we don't want to miss an opportunity, but again, it could happen. Mashiach just comes and he just takes us by the hand and he shows us how to make every right decision after this. But if that doesn't happen, I say, focus on loving each other. Focus on loving each other now. All right. You.
Bye-bye.